What's up, everyone? Nick Allen here, tech consultant based out of New York City. And today I'm going to answer the question, how do you break into tech? Being able to say, I work in tech is something that a lot of people are striving for nowadays, especially as the more traditional workplace is starting to go by the wayside. But the path to actually get there can be daunting for a lot of people. So what I wanted to run through today was, one, how you can think about setting yourself up for success, but also talking a bit about my own journey and things that I did to ensure that I was successful in achieving my goal of working for, in my case, a tech startup. Tech is a super general term that has been conflated and satirized over the years to represent the companies of Silicon Valley where the snacks are plentiful, the dogs can roam free, the kombucha flows infinitely, and your day-to-day acceptable wardrobe is a t-shirt, jeans, and of course, who could forget the company-branded Patagonia sweater vest. Yes, those things are real and things that a lot of people are really excited about when joining a new tech company, but there's so many other things to consider when joining a tech company. There are different companies, there are different roles within those companies, and there's different types of companies that are all consisted within this tech ecosystem that I think are all really important things to consider when looking for a role at a startup. Many people who aspire to work in tech come from the ranks of the Big Four or MBB or insert bank name here. Others might enter into tech as soon as they graduate college, while others might have the quote-unquote non-traditional route of entering into tech. This might be they were a teacher beforehand, or maybe they worked in government or did any other conceivable thing that ultimately somehow led them to think that joining a tech company was something that they ultimately wanted to do with their career. What I argue, however, is that there isn't really any non-traditional path into tech. The main thing that we all have in common is that we want to be a part of something that is innovative, challenging, and in general, something rewarding that might have greater impact to society, to the tech ecosystem, or whatever problem that particular company is trying to solve. And we all want to be a part of that. So I'm a strong believer that really anyone who wants to make it into tech, as long as you put your mind to it and put that effort in, really anyone can do so. I talked a bit about in a previous video how my personal path into tech might have sounded a bit more non-traditional, which it definitely is in certain ways, but in general, I think a lot of us have that non-traditional path into tech. And as long as you put your mind to it and as long as you have the right mindset going into this process, I think all of us can be successful in achieving those goals. With the fact in mind that everyone who goes to a tech company brings a diverse amount of experience to the table wherever they end up going, I think there's a lot of different things that the prospective tech employee needs to be thinking about as they start thinking about what they want to do within the tech industry. With that, I've distilled down 6 main things that I think are really important and for me were especially relevant as I was thinking about entering the field of tech, and just some of the things that I did to ensure that I was successful and things that I've seen others do as well to ensure that they're successful. So with that, let's go ahead and jump into the first topic. So I think the first question that any prospective tech employee needs to ask themselves is, what are you actually interested in doing at a company? And by this, I mean, what exact job function are you interested in doing? There are so many different types of jobs and roles that employees can have within a tech company. So asking yourself, what roles sound interesting to me? Am I interested in engineering? Or am I interested in being a product manager? Or going into finance at a tech company? Or managing customer relationships? There are so many different things that you can do within a tech company. But the first question you really need to ask to figure that out is, what skills do I bring to the table? What have I done in the past that makes me uniquely qualified to be able to perform this particular job function that I'm interested in doing? And with that, you may have to take a look at, what level of experience you have and if there are any gaps in that experience that you may potentially need. For example, maybe you have a bit of tech background but don't really know how to code, but you want to be an engineer. In that case, you'll obviously need to maybe take a course or fill that technical gap in some way or fill whatever gap you may potentially see in your background in some particular way. So these are all some questions that you need to ask yourself and kind of have an understanding of when you start looking at potential roles or potential functions that you'd be interested within a tech company. The second question to ask yourself is, what type of company do you actually want to work for? There are so many different types of tech companies out there, ranging from the smaller startups that are a bit scrappier and maybe have fewer employees, but have the opportunity to wear different hats and try a lot of different things and actually have maybe more influence than you would have at, let's say, a larger company like Google or Twitter or Facebook or any of these other cornerstone monolith tech companies that we all know and are household names. With each of these different types of companies, there's obviously benefits and positives and negatives to each. With a smaller company, you, like I mentioned, may have more influence and play a larger role in working on a number of different things. Maybe a more well-established startup that is, maybe has 100, 200, 300 employees, a lot of funding, and is really starting to grow, have the opportunity to be in something that might be a bit more stable. Whereas in these large companies, you just have this massive company and you have the name and brand recognition with that company, and you may be able to do a lot of interesting things, but what you're actually working on might be a much smaller slice of whatever business offering that particular company has. So there's a lot of different things to consider, but ultimately it needs to be the type of company that is ultimately going to work for you, your dreams, your hopes, desires, what you're hoping to look for, and what your overall goal is for working at a particular company. The third thing to consider is, what industries are you interested in? Throughout your research, you'll find a lot of different types of companies out there that will brand themselves as insert field name tech here, right? And what I mean by that is like med tech or fintech or health tech or ad tech or martech, or all of the different types of techs out there that represent marketing, advertising, healthcare, life sciences, whatever it might be. There's a lot of different types of companies out there that are trying to use technology in different ways to solve problems within their field. But is it important for you to find a company that is specific to a field that you're interested in? Or are you more interested in just the general experience of working for a tech company, where you don't really care what field you're working in and you just want to gain the experience in being a customer success manager or being an engineer or being a salesperson, right? So there's a number of different things to consider around the type of company that you join from a industry perspective, and each company within these industries are doing a bunch of really cool things, but definitely something that you need to think about as you choose which companies you want to apply to. The fourth question that you need to ask yourself, and this is especially true for roles that might be more tech forward, like working in engineering or being a product manager, is what level of experience do you have in those competencies? And what gaps do you need to fill in order to be successful in that? There's kind of two parts to this answer. I think if you are someone who maybe has been an engineer previously or has done something that in a bit more technical context in the past, I think continuing to build upon whatever skills you have is incredibly important. Keeping a pulse on the industry. If you're looking to enter a different industry or vertical of tech, being able to keep the pulse on what types of technologies are those companies using in that particular space that you're looking to enter and things like that. But also revamping if you have a blog or if you have a portfolio, continuing to build that out and just ensure that you have a well-polished, up-to-date understanding of the industry, your own skills, and things that you need to work on in order to be successful in whatever that future role is. The second part of that are folks who may have no experience in coding, for example. And there are plenty of those out there who have absolutely no experience and are looking for ways to essentially enter into a field that they have never seen before. With that, it can definitely sound pretty daunting if you've never written a line of code but are hoping to be an engineer at some point. But I can assure you that it is possible and you can do it. It might just require a bit of grit and self-teaching to get yourself there. There are definitely resources out there ranging from these online boot camps to in-person boot camps or intensive workshops where you're kind of working for a lot and you might have to spend some money to do these things. But that's definitely one option, and there are definitely paths for you to be successful going that route. But I think another option that I've done personally is using all the resources available on the internet for free or for a really low dollar amount to actually teach yourself things. So one thing that I did was take a web development course on Udemy where I paid about 15 bucks for it. And it was incredibly well taught and really well done, and kind of taught me everything that I needed to be successful in the roles that I ultimately ended up applying for. So I think just having that grit mentality and kind of growth mindset of building up your skill set and ensuring that you have everything that you need to be successful, I think is incredibly important, but not impossible by any means. The fifth question to ask yourself is, who do you know in the industry? If you know people that work for tech firms that you're interested in or work in the type of field that you want to do, so maybe you know an engineer or you know a salesperson or you know someone that's a product manager at a particular company that is interesting to you, use that connection to learn more about what they do on a day-to-day basis, what their own story was, and how they ultimately got to where they are today. I think a lot of people may underestimate the power of their network and how their network can really help them find opportunities and learn more about whatever they're hoping to accomplish in the future. And it's incredibly powerful to be able to either talk to a friend or ask to be introduced to a friend of a friend who may work in a particular type of role that you're really interested in. This is something that I did a ton of when I first started to explore entering into the field of tech, and I learned so much from a lot of these conversations. A lot of this was also back when you could obviously be in person, and in-person meetups were something that were happening all the time. So go to a talk or go to a fireside chat or whatever it might be, and then afterwards there's these networking events where you get to meet all kinds of people and make these connections and have these longer term relationships that can ultimately pay a lot of dividends in the future. And these are things that I definitely utilize quite a bit of, and nowadays with COVID and the limitations of actually being in person in place, there are definitely a lot of things that are starting to pop up where it's a virtual meetup and maybe it's a smaller group of people that you can talk to in breakout rooms or whatever it might be. But definitely leverage your network as much as possible. And if you don't directly know someone that works there, go on LinkedIn or find people that are second or third degree connections and just do cold reach outs to those types of people. I did this a lot as well, and you'd be surprised how strangers are willing to talk to someone that they've never met before to give their experience and talk a bit about themselves. So definitely recommend that everyone leverages their networks, ask people that you know to give you their input on their own experience and how you can potentially better position yourself to be successful. And number 6, I think the last question that you really need to ask yourself is, why do you want to do this? And what is your motivation for entering into tech? This is something that if you don't come from tech previously, you are inherently going to get asked by interviewers as you start applying and having those initial screening calls and making your way through the recruitment process. Having a strong answer to that and a strong internal understanding of why you want to do this, I think, can really guide you and put you on a path to success when you ultimately start upon this endeavor for yourself. A lot of this ultimately comes down to what picture you paint for yourself in your resumes and your cover letters. And I definitely am looking forward to, in the future, having conversations specifically around how to position yourself in a resume or a cover letter, but definitely thinking about those types of things and why you ultimately want to enter into a career of tech is incredibly important and something that I think everyone needs to have a solid answer for when they start that interview process. I know there was a lot that I just ran through, but I hope the main takeaway that you get from this today is that anyone who sets their mind to it can enter the field of tech, regardless of what you're interested in, regardless of what your background is. I think as long as you have the grit and the determination and put in the work to ensure that you ultimately get that coveted startup job or tech job or whatever it is, that you can be successful and that you can find something that makes the most sense for you and your career aspirations. There's obviously a long path, and there's going to be, roadblocks in the way and rejections along the path, but don't get discouraged. Keep on going. Really excited to hear how all of you, I hope, can use some of the advice that I gave today to ultimately achieve some of those goals. But until then, I'll leave it at that. Thanks again for watching today. Like, subscribe if you thought that this was useful or got any value out of this, and we'll chat soon.